guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we will take a look at some new JustNoHOA content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first one is titled, Homeowner Association Banned My Pool and My Dogs. I have lived in the same house for the last 15 years with my wife, 2 daughters and our 2 dogs. It is a beautiful home with a pool and a big yard that the kids love to run around in. My wife and I bought the house together right after we got married. We live in a wonderful, quiet neighborhood and have never had any sort of problems. We keep up with the maintenance of our home, as it is our pride and joy, and has been for the last 15 years. We obviously have a lot of memories in this home, and it is especially important to us as a family. Up until recently, we have never had any issues living in our home. However, a couple of years ago, a petition started circling around the neighborhood in order to create an homeowner association. I admit, I was against this from the beginning. We had happily lived in our neighborhood for 15 years without an homeowner association, and I was not sure what compelled people to think we needed one now. When some of the neighbors talked to my wife and I about forming a homeowner association, I had stated my opinion and advised against it. Some people were like me and completely against the homeowner association. But to my surprise, more than enough people voted for the homeowner association because late in 2020, the neighborhood officially formed the homeowners association. However, even though the homeowner association formed, I refused to sign the papers that would make my family and I join them. It just was not something that I agreed with, and some of the rules they were already talking about would be heartbreaking and expensive to my family and me. They continually pressured me to join the homeowner association, even though I told them countless times that I was not willing to because of the rules. Some of the rules I would not mind meeting in the middle, but other rules just did not make sense to me. While I had never been a part of an homeowner association before, I had only heard bad things about it and ridiculous rules they would make you follow. I definitely did not have a good impression of homeowner associations. For example, one of the rules they were trying to impose on us was that we could not have any large dogs over 50 pounds. One would think that this would only apply to people who adopted dogs after the homeowner association was formed, but this also included the dogs that people had before the homeowner association. I have 2 large dogs, 1 black Labrador and 1 border collie that we have had since our daughters were born. They have not known life without these dogs and are extremely attached to them, and it would be absolutely devastating to them if we got rid of them. It seems completely unreasonable that we would be required to get rid of our beloved pets that we adopted before the homeowner association was formed. The next rule was that no houses could have in-ground pools. This does not make sense as more than half of the homes in the neighborhood had an in-ground pool built with the original blueprints of the house. To completely remove our pool and renovate the backyard would cost us thousands of dollars. Besides this, one of the reasons we fell in love with the house is because of the backyard and pool. Our daughters also love the pool and spend many afternoons swimming in the pool. How were we supposed to explain to them that we were no longer allowed to have the pool? The third issue was the homeowner association said our home was not aligned with the rules and regulations they were putting in place for the aesthetics of the neighborhood. The first issue is that they claimed our roof was the wrong color. We had just had our roof redone about 3 years ago, and I did not see how the color of the roof was an issue because it matched the house and the rest of the neighborhood. Well, they had wanted everyone's roofs to be the same color. On top of the ridiculous roof requirements, they also had an issue with our front doors, the trim color on our window frames, the type of grass our front lawn had, and the material and color of our wood fence around the house. We also were not allowed to park our cars in the street and were not allowed to park in our own driveway. We also were not allowed to have our RV parked anywhere where it would be visible. This was one of the most ridiculous rules because we did not have a garage, so where were we supposed to park our cars? The homeowner association said everyone had 3 months to fix all of these violations and get their house ready for inspection, to make sure that everything was within the homeowner association guidelines. To fix everything they wanted would be unreasonably expensive, and to be quite honest, at that point, with as much as it would cost, we were better off moving and buying a new house. I obviously did not want to move or buy a new house, as my kids are growing up in this house and my wife and I have created our lives within our home. We live in a small town in rural Texas, so finding a lawyer was not by any means easy. All of these changes were ridiculous, and word got around in the neighborhood that people were starting to regret voting in the homeowner association. Most people thought there might be a few rules and minor changes to their homes but did not think it would be this extreme. While some people were willing to make some of these changes, I was not. I was so determined to find a good lawyer and fight the violations, especially the ones regarding the pool and dogs, since this was stuff that I had before the homeowner association. So, with some extensive research, I was able to find a lawyer that actually specialized in homeowner association cases. After gathering all the information and as much evidence as I could, I presented it to the lawyer with the hopes of getting the homeowner association disbanded. If I could not get the homeowner association disbanded, I at least hope it was enough information to change the regulations they had put into place or get rid of some of them altogether. With all the information I had, and plus with the homeowner association constantly pressuring me to join them, I was able to take the case to court and win against them. They ended up having to pay fines to all the members of the homeowner association because some of their rules were not legal. I learned that as long as some of the stuff was done before the homeowner association, like the pool, that they could not legally make us change it. Some of the neighbors had already started making the changes to their homes, and while most of them were minor, they got all their fees paid back to them. The neighborhood voted on disbanding the homeowner association after I won the case, because they realized that the rules they were imposing were useless and added no value or benefits to us or our homes. The next one is titled, Micromanager Revenge. Some years ago I worked at a logistics facility and leadership had a way of adding workload to middle management. Rarely did any of them last more than 3 years before they either got disillusioned or changed jobs somehow. After working the floor there for 2 years I was promoted to a team leader, and after 3 years as team leader I became shift leader, managing a shift of about 60 workers. We did pretty well. No other shift at this or other facilities could match our KPIs, and we did a lot of cross-training and on-the-fly adapting to the ever-changing needs of the company, current orders and workflow. I found the work to be interesting and challenging until I got a new manager who bent towards micromanaging. It didn't take long before he wanted me to write a detailed log of how I spent my days, hours and 14 hours. I told him this was a really bad idea, but if he wanted this, I would of course comply. The first week I accounted for every 30 minutes with a line or two, thinking this was enough of a waste of time. But I was soon informed of my mistake. New boss wanted more details and every 15 minutes accounted for. Again I told him this wasn't smart, but I got overruled. The next week I made sure to write 4 or 5 lines for every 15 minutes of the workday, like writing down the names of the works who took the early lunch, and who took the later lunch. I wrote the same lines for every 15 minutes if the task took more than 15 minutes and so on. To his credit, he actually followed up on a few things the first 3 weeks. And if he had kept doing that, I wouldn't have complained much. But, of course, he gave up after a couple of weeks. I noticed this when I made a reference to one of the follow-ups and how we had failed that specific metric for a good reason but never heard anything from him. So from then on I suspected he had stopped reading my logs. Q. Malicious compliance. After keeping the logs honest for a few weeks more I felt secure that he never read them. I started adding a few tidbits of my own making. At first it was a line telling him that if he used a certain phrase when talking to me the next week, I'd buy him a soda. He never used any of the phrases and thus never got free stuff. An example of a phrase could be, pineapples are best served hot, or, apples are sweeter than oranges. General statements, but unlikely to pop up randomly in conversations. Boss still claimed he read every single one of my reports and ridiculed me for claiming it was a bad idea. As the weeks went on without having to pay up, my malicious compliance kept getting bigger and bigger. Eventually I promised him $100 in cash if he would talk to me about a specific picking location in our facility during the next week. He didn't, but of course I also started writing many relevant things into the logs, like questions for him on how to solve potential problem, telling him he needed to start planning for vacations well in advance of the holidays and such. Still no response in any way, shape or form. If he really did read them, why not use them to get questions and potential problems on the record? So after a year of writing logs that were never read and hadn't been opened since I saved them in the assigned folder, our great leader got himself into some trouble and tried to shift the blame onto his underlings. We didn't appreciate that. Especially when the cause of the trouble was written in clear text in these logs from the very first moment we discovered there might be a problem, all the way up to where it was an ongoing hindrance that cost us more and more time and money every week. Eventually a big meeting was called with all us foremen, team leads, shift leads and middle managers, with several big brass observing our boss trying to fix the situation. Whenever he went for one of my people, I stood up for them and told them I took the responsibility for the entire shift. There was no need for him to call out my people, because I was there, and it was my responsibility. A gleam in his eye told me he was about to make me the scapegoat, and I sat there calmly while he tore me a new one. He didn't hold back and really gave me his all, to such an extent that several of the big brass started stirring uncomfortably. They could probably sense he was overplaying his hand. After the tirade petered out or he had run out of steam, I asked him if he was done. And if he was done, if I could reply. He agreed and leaned back in his chair, confident in his character assassination of me. I took out my laptop, connected it to the big screen so that everyone could see, and opened the folder where my logs were saved. I pointed out that they hadn't been opened in a while and that track changes had been activated and no changes had been logged by his user. My user was the only one that had made the logs, edited them and saved them. I then went on describing the log entries where the problem was discovered, how he tracked its development and maturation into the big problem it was today. One of the best moments was when I could show everyone that we had in fact suggested several solutions to the problem many times. I had also logged that we had several meetings discussing the problem, its causes and probable solutions, sometimes even directly asking my manager what he thought about them. There were logs that showed we had told him about this problem many times, in many ways, but no logs of any solutions or response from him. I was so focused on the presentation I didn't really look at my boss, but when I was done, I glanced up at him and I can safely say I've never seen a face more angry than his. He was furious. But of course his boss and his boss's boss was there, right next to him, so he couldn't do much. His boss asked him if he had anything to say for himself, but he didn't really. He claimed I had edited them later and filled in details not known at the time of writing, but he was obviously reaching for anything to save himself. One of the big brass asked about a phrase he had seen. What's so special about picking location? I told them all about my little joke and how my boss had missed getting tens of free sodas and probably $400 if he had merely said the magic words each week. Amidst general laughter, I was told to leave the meeting along with anybody my pay grade or lower. 3 hours later, some security guy emptied his office of his personal belongings, and 2 weeks later a new boss arrived from another facility. It took him 3 days to ask about pineapples and other apples, and he had made sure that there was nothing wrong with the aforementioned picking location. He also told me to keep the logs more general and only a few lines for each day, but to also mention things of operative importance directly to him. Newest boss and me had a great relationship where he left me and my shift mostly alone, and we kept topping out KPIs for the rest of my time in that company. Micromanager boss that was fired eventually found a new job at a lower level at another company, but only lasted about a year. 5 years later I saw him selling used cars in a neighboring town. Life hadn't treated him well. The next one is titled, Rude Costumer Won't Be Getting Her Christmas Outfit. So, I work in a big clothing store. Since this is the last week before Christmas and our store is pretty big, I expected to have more people on a shift to cover up everything. But, I was wrong. The amount of customers is double compared to other normal weeks, so we are pretty understaffed. Yesterday I was working at the changing rooms. My job was to keep them clean, make sure that people are respecting the COVID guidance and putting back the clothes left by the customers. There were many costumers, a huge line and a lot of frustrated people, but I was doing quite a good job. As I was minding my business, a lady shouts to me from the last changing room, "You there, bring me an S for this skirt." I went there and she told me that she has the perfect Christmas outfit in mind, but she needs an S for the skirt she was trying on now. I told her that I will bring it, but she will need to be patient since I have a lot of work to do. 5 minutes later, as I was ready to go and bring that skirt, the costumers once again shouts, "Where is the skirt?" I once again go there, and I nicely told her that I was about to go and bring it. She says, "Forget it, I'll bring it myself, looks nobody does any work in this store." I nicely explained that my job is not to bring clothes to customers, but to take clothes from the changing room and put them back, but I wanted to be nice and do her a favor by bringing that skirt. She said something about me being useless and goes back to change. At that point I was really annoyed with her entitlement, so I went and took the only S left from that skirt in the entire store and I booked it for myself. The store allows employees to do that during work hours, so it wasn't a problem. As I went back to the changing rooms, I saw that lady hysterically searching for an S. I'll put the skirt back right after Christmas. The next one is titled, His Stupid Driving Caused a Wreck, but I walked off with a little satisfaction. I was driving around knocking out some last-minute Christmas stuff last week, and I'm getting ready to pull into a Target, turning left across traffic from a dedicated turn lane. Another car pulls up in the lane to my right, not a turn lane, stops, puts his signal on as though he also wants to turn into the Target. No problem, except that he's stopped in the middle of the street with traffic rapidly approaching behind him. I guess a couple of cars don't see him in time, and rear-end collide trying to avoid his dumb ass. I pull into the lot, as does he, while the other cars are now wrecked and limping off the road to exchange info. This guy has no idea what just happened. He pulls into the Target without a care in the world, cruises around and finds a spot, gets out. I said, "Man, do you realize you just caused an accident because you were stopped in the middle of the street?" He looks at me dumbfounded, says WHHAAT? Like he was completely stoned out of his mind or something. Yeah, you completely locked up traffic and caused a wreck, and now the police are on the way and I've got your license plate info, so I wouldn't go anywhere, I told him. He's just stammering away, obviously messed up. He's looking, panicky, over toward the street where it happened. The cars have since left, maybe the damage was minimal, who knows. But he's freaking out. "Yeah dude, you probably better stay put or they're gonna nail your ass for leaving the scene," I told him. Of course I had no idea if the police were actually called or not, nor did I really care. But this guy was a total dumbass, too likely high or otherwise impaired and needed to have his evening speed bumped a bit. I parked on the other side of the lot, walked into the store, killed about an hour and a half checking stuff off my kids list. When I walked out, the dipcrap was still there, pacing back and forth looking over near the road like he was expecting a SWAT van to roll up any moment. I drove past him on the way out, rolled down my window, and he sees me and says, "Dude, did you say the cops were coming?" "I haven't seen anyone yet, I'm freaking out man." "Yeah, pretty sure they're on their way, bud, you probably better hold tight," I said as I drove off. The stupid dude is probably still pacing around the parking lot melting down.